And we're live. Yes, we made it yet another week. Hello and welcome. This is Fearless Flight Live, our weekly live show, where if you are afraid to fly or you're interested in aviation, this is the place to come, and you're especially in luck today because we have a special crew edition. Our fearless leader is off flying somewhere with a fearful flyer and couldn't make it back. So we have tonight our lovely flight attendant Diane. Hi, Diane.
Hi, everybody.
And Captain Eric. Hey, Captain, how are you tonight?
Good. Hi, guys. Yes, the fearless leader, according to Flight Aware's flight is 2 hours and 52 minutes behind schedule coming back into Phoenix. So if he pops up, we will not only fake looking surprised, we will be surprised.
Well, but we will talk about holiday and winter, especially winter preparations, because in some parts of the country and indeed the continent, there is such a thing as winter. I know we haven't had much, but I think there might be a little bit. So I'm gonna be just starting up our share here. First thing I want to say, if you are not a member of our Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather Facebook group, you're missing out. There's just amazing posts and commentaries from former Fearful Flyers, from people who are really in a bind and wanting support and getting that support from their fellow Birds of a Feather members. And it's just a great space to be in. Last week we featured Jory, but even in this past week, there have been quite a few other people that contributed, and it's really a great place to hang out if you are afraid to fly or if you want to pay it forward and support those that are still working on becoming fearless flyers. So that's our Birds of a Feather Facebook group. And like I said, um, we are going to talk about winter operations. But first, I wanted to share something we haven't talked about in a long time. So, as far as I'm aware of, and I realize that's limited, but since I've joined up with Captain Ron, we've been conducting this fear flying research study, and we have almost 1,000 entries on that. And I really, if you are new to the channel, if you're new to Fearless Flight, then I highly and highly encourage you to enter into this survey, um, and be part of the largest continuous research study on fear of flying. So, and I'm gonna just say it before the holidays, before Christmas, we are gonna pull one of the new entries starting now. And somebody's gonna win a coaching session, 60-minute coaching session with Captain Ron. So I'm gonna put the link in the chat in a little bit as well. I just really would love for you to participate, and every so often, Captain Ron and I talk a little bit about the results of the survey. So that's always an interesting talk as well. So um, like I said, I'm gonna put that link in the chat, but here let's switch over to winter operations. And part of winter operations are the passenger preparation, the airport, the crew, the aircraft de-icing, and any other winter hazards that come along with winter. So I'm gonna turn it over to Diane. Diane, what can you tell us about passenger and airport preparation?
Yes. And being it's the day before the busiest flight day traditionally in the entire year, this is a wonderful time to talk about something that we have brought up before, which is packing. This is the first simple thing, because you can do this at home. Optimally, you're doing this at home. And that is to, along with everything else you need to pack, the most important thing is to pack your patience, because it is going to be a very busy day tomorrow. The flying public has come back, as we've discussed before, come back to flying after COVID in numbers that nobody really imagined or predicted. People thought that people were still going to be afraid to fly, but no, they were saving up all of their travel enthusiasm for the time that they could get out. And I just, when I had gone online, the TSA forecasts tomorrow the numbers of 2.9 million people to be scanned.
Wow.
2.9 million, 2.8 today, Tuesday, but 2.9 tomorrow. So we're not kidding when we talk about making sure you pack your patients. The normal things that we talk about are even more important, which is to get to the airport early. And part of that has to, it's not just when you're in the terminal to get your bag checked if you need to do that, get through security, but simply there are lots and lots of people getting dropped off at the airport. And the simple idea of all of those extra vehicles, cars, whether they be Uber or your next door neighbor giving you a ride to the airport, there's going to be a lot of vehicular traffic around all of the airports. And certainly it's not a problem down in Phoenix, but if the weather's really bad and you're trying to get to Denver International or other places where the snow might or bad driving conditions might delay. So it makes it even more important. So, but even if the weather's wonderful where we are, you'll probably need a little extra time as far as even getting to the airport. And that goes the same for being picked up. When you get to over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house, that might be a factor as far as your travel plans. This is the time of year, as well as around Christmas, where we have a lot of people flying who are not experienced travelers. These are not your average businessman, businesswoman going, being road warrior type people. These are individuals who are literally, maybe grandma's coming to your house or whatnot, and they are not as experienced. And so that's another reason to pack your patience for yourself and for your fellow travelers, that you may have individuals who are not familiar with the rules for TSA or any of those other kinds of circumstances. So try to be patient and helpful if you can at those times. And to throw in a couple more things, this is the season of coats. This is when people are bringing coats, big coats, puffy coats. There's a limited amount of space in the bins in aircraft. And a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that everybody who has a seat is going to have a bin. It doesn't unfortunately work out that way. And certainly, as I have had to remind some of my passengers when I was flying, that you bought the seat, you didn't buy the bin. So if the bin directly over your seat is full, then you can certainly put it across the way. Try to make sure your bag is in the general vicinity of where you're sitting, because that can make deplaning easier if you're around your bin. And along that line, don't move anybody else's stuff. That's a real big one. If you need to get your bag in a bin and there's some room there, don't start moving other passengers' things that can create some drama. Always ask the flight attendant. We are always willing to help. We can't load your bag. We can't do those kinds of things, but we can certainly ask other people, passengers, to help to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to stow their bigger bag on the overhead bin. And right along with that, don't put your coats up there. I mean, honest to goodness, you can keep your coat in your lap. We really need to have the things that can go in laps can be in a lap, but the rollerboards can't. So let's try to be considerate in those kinds of circumstances. And then another thing, when we're talking about actually skipping a line down crew preparation, keep in mind that the pilots and the flight attendants are not going to be home for Thanksgiving. That's how you're getting to your family and your friends, is that Eric when he was flying and me when I was flying, we weren't home. I was just showing them my very first Thanksgiving as a flight attendant. I spent in a hotel in downtown Salt Lake City, and we had Thanksgiving dinner sitting at the bar because that's the only place that we could get served. That's not exactly the most conducive thought, but we were with our crew and it was wonderful. But be extra, try to be nice to the crew because they're going to be away from their home and their family as well. Um, so that's pretty much as far as the normal advice and suggestions for your travel. The airport, and I was telling Eric and Dieter earlier that next month in December, I will be celebrating my 20th year of volunteering at Phoenix Sky Harbor. And so between the 20 years of volunteering at the airport and 5.5 years as a flight attendant, the airports put on more people so that there'll be more TSA agents. There'll be more operations agents. The airlines themselves will have more of their employees working the ticket counters, working the gates. So the airports do a lot of preparation in anticipation for these busy holiday travel dates tomorrow, and then the other busy days are Sunday and Monday of after Thanksgiving, as far as everybody getting back home. So all of those things that we were talking about to prepare on tomorrow, also very important for Sunday and Monday. So just be patient, because the next topic of conversation is going to be Captain Eric talking about winter conditions and hazards and our fave de-icing. So that's pretty much what I have as far as the passengers and the crew and the airports in getting you at least into the airport, parking in the airport, getting you on the plane. And then Eric, once you're on the plane, your turn.
Yeah, how does the crew prepare, and like how do you prepare for, a busy holiday season? Like is there something that you do differently, maybe even as pilots, like in terms of, I know one thing is everything, like Diane says, everything takes longer. So but yeah, how do you prepare for the busiest season?
Well, because I'm an old softy or got to be an old softy later in my career, I would actually show up a little early just in case I could see a problem coming to see if I could head it off so I wasn't going to inconvenience people more than they were about to get inconvenienced. So I'd get there and try and handle stuff in advance. But what I'm going to talk to you guys about, because of a direct concern to you guys that have a little bit of claustrophobia and nervous about the airplane, is the de-icing stuff. And we've talked about it before, but we talk about the overwater and the ETOPS a lot. And we used to do this every year in our winter preparation in our recurrent classes, or as my friend's mom called it, reoccurrence. Are you going to reoccurrence? It occurred before and it will occur again. And go, yep, we're going to reoccurrence, Maddie. And so in the winter reoccurrence, we would talk about de-icing. So we're going to talk about that in a minute, and we'll tie in the airport a little bit because they're working to keep the airport up and running in some inclement weather. And Dieter has some pretty cool slides of his hometown in June, and
Yeah.
we'll show those to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Not
so
quite June, but maybe.
So this is not Orlando, highly likely not. But as you can see, the airports, and this is a great picture of the plows, they're offset and staggered. So when they're getting heavy snow, they're going to probably only keep one or two runways open and fight to keep those open rather than waste time on runways they aren't using. So they're gonna work hard to keep those clear, and they're going to be runways positioned that the aircraft are using for landing and departure, and more specifically, the runways that they're going to be using for departure that are positioned near the de-icing gantry, so the airplanes can get de-iced and get on the runway quickly, because that's a time critical thing. And here it's a charming day out, but it looks like it wasn't a charming day last night. And this is another picture of Dieter's hometown, probably, and they're out getting it clear. And at least now, once they've got it off, it's going to stay off for a while. But they've got a few bucks invested in equipment there, and that's a great shot of it.
Yep.
So we have a couple. I wrote down some scenarios, and I dropped them. Working pretty hard on this. I wrote down some scenarios and some frequently asked questions that I thought I could head off for you guys. And we show up as a crew, and there are about 4 different scenarios I thought of. And one is the crew arrives at the airport, and it's well below freezing. But the airplane is more importantly the wings and the airplane are totally clear of contamination. There's no snow on it, no ice on it, but it's really cold out. But there's nothing adhering to the aircraft. Well, we're not worried about if it's too cold and the airplane's fingers are cold through the mittens because it doesn't care how cold it is. It gets a lot colder at altitude. All we care about is if there's something interfering with lift, which is contamination on the airplane. And if the airplane's clear, we're just going to go in and heat it up for you guys to board, and we're gonna fire it up and take off. So that's our easiest scenario. Number 2, we arrive at the airport and it's now still well below freezing. Or the worst time for this kind of stuff is right at freezing, 3 or 4 degrees below. Man, that's when you get the heavy snow and the heavy ice and all that. When the air can hold the most moisture and nail us with it. But we come to the airport and see that is contamination sticking to the airplane. But let's say it's a nice day like that last picture with the plows. Clear skies, nothing coming down, but the aircraft got nailed last night and there's stuff stuck to it. In the old days, I would talk about the old days, the way old days, 30, 40 years ago, the captain might look at the airplane and go, "Oh, that's not too much. It can carry that." Well, a lot of times he would be right. But on a few instances, he was not right, and it ended with disastrous consequences. So now there is no judgment allowed in that regard. If there's stuff stuck to the airplane, off it's got to come. So what will happen is either at the gate or at a designated de-icing area, which we'll show you a slide of in a minute, the airplane is going to go out there and it's going to get sprayed with type 1 de-icing fluid, which is superheated ethylene glycol. And it'll get all the stuff cleared off it, and it will be just. And look another picture from Dieter's hometown. It is in fact an Air Canada airplane. Look how clean that airplane looks after they've nailed that thing like that. I mean, just strips it clean. And if there's no weather or precipitation at the time, the airplane can then go out to the runway and take off. The next scenario is the crew arrives, same thing. The airplane has some contamination on it, but there's very light precipitation, light snow, light freezing precipitation coming down, but it's really, as we would call, trace. Well, what will happen then is the airplane will be de-iced as in before, and then we use a set of tables and charts called holdover times, HOTs, and the holdover times will dictate how long we can wait once the airplane has been de-iced to go. And with type 1 fluid on the airplane, the holdover time's pretty limited, and the snow has to be very light for it just to be type 1, if it is in fact still coming down. But in some cases, the airplane can still be legal for takeoff. So the worst scenario is number 4, in which you and the crew are a complete and total loser. It's probably what's going on in this picture right here. The airplane's caked with stuff, and the stuff is still coming out of the sky, and it's coming out at a pretty good rate. Now you're going to do a 2-step de-icing process. The first thing you'll do is hit it with that type 1 fluid, the superheated ethylene glycol, and strip it off completely clean. Then in the United States, we'll apply a type 4 fluid, and you're automatically, because I know the way you guys are, we'll go, what about type 2 and 3? Types 2 are used on propeller and turboprop airplanes should you wish to de-ice them since they have a little bit slower takeoff speeds. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Type 3 is very effective and more commonly used in Europe. We really only use Type 1 and then Type 4 in the United States. At any rate, so we'll strip the airplane clean with this Type 1 fluid, and then we'll apply the Type 4 over the top, which is propylene glycol. And depending on the manufacturers, it will be a different color. I think we've got a picture of a
Yeah,
Union
we got
Carbide.
that one.
Yeah, he's going to pull it up. So, and all the colors are beautiful and fabulous and make the airplane look good. So they can be blue or green or orange, depending on the manufacturer, if it's Dow or Union Carbide or DuPont or whatever. And the colors, besides making the airplane look fabulous, serve a secondary purpose. When you observe them on the wing, once the airplane will be coated with this stuff, and when you see it on the wing, you can tell by a slight change in the color when it has lost effectiveness or absorbed too much moisture. We'll talk about that in a minute. So anyway, the airplane is coated with this Type 4 fluid, and the airports and the airlines have gotten smart now, and they set the de-icing pads up real close to the departure runway and put the airplanes in there in order they're going to take off so they can go in. And as Diane's buddies at work, she was telling me about earlier, go to the car wash, come out of the car wash, go to the runway and blast off. So there's not much time between getting the protective stuff on there and taking off. And we have accurate graphs and charts telling us how long we can wait and how much of that stuff we can absorb before we go. Um, there is a codicil in there where if the holdover time has been exceeded, then the pilots are allowed to go look at the fluid, and you can judge by the appearance of the fluid when it's absorbed too much. Now, generally, pilots aren't allowed to guess outfit colors, but they are allowed to guess from the color of the de-icing fluid if there's been too much absorbency. And if it's still good, they can go. But if it's not, then your day just went from bad to worse because now you're going to start all over again. They're going to hit it completely with Type 1, strip it completely clean, and then they're going to recover it with Type 4 again a second time. I never had to do that twice. Generally, it was set up pretty well and you could get going. So the
I've
other
been in a situation like that, Eric, where it was actually in one is in Toronto and then it was in Vienna on the way back. So same trip both times and it takes at least 20 to 30
oh,
minutes. Like
oh
that
that
whole
that
victory
was
lap.
fast.
And
That
it's
was
and
fast.
that's happened to me in the short time I've been flying. We've had to go back at least twice
Mm.
uh,
Oh,
to
incredible.
get de-iced. And the only thing that's I imagine worse from the perspective of how upset the pilots are, the looks on the faces of my
Yeah.
passengers.
I
They're
never
like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, I never had the guts to do it, but I always wanted to get on the PA and go, yes, you are going to miss your connection without a doubt. So don't even
Which,
answer. To
which
quote my second most favorite movie, as you guys know by now, Princess Bride, it is almost inconceivable that you can take Type 1 and Type 4 and leave and make your connection unless somehow your connecting airplane is doing the same thing.
also late.
But
Yeah.
you're in a statistically very marginal position now.
And
But
that goes back to pack your patience, right?
back to
Yes.
patients. But back to the fluids, which is really cool. The smart old chemical engineers. And one of the questions might be, well, doesn't that add weight to the airplane? Yeah, it adds hundreds or maybe thousands of pounds to the airplane. And what happens to it is the crystal lattice structure of the fluid is in planes. Like if you've ever seen silica or mica or something like that, it's all structured in linear planes. And when the airplane goes honking down the runway, somewhere about 100 miles an hour, all of it just shears off all at once. off the airplane. It's as clean as it was when they finish it with a Type 1 fluid. It has no weight, no ice, no nothing, and off it goes. Um, so I guessed a couple of questions. That was one of them that you might ask. Okay, yes, you'll miss your connection. Yeah, it adds weight, but it comes off. And oh, people would ask me this once in a while, even the flight attendants did, and I would have to explain that to them at crew debriefing in the hotel later. Say, well, when we enter icing conditions, why shouldn't we land and de-ice? Isn't this a problem? Once the airplane is, and it is not a problem, once the airplane is going forward fast, the only place ice accumulates is in a very thin strip of the leading edge of the wings and on the engine cowls. And in jet airplanes, we got a lot of heat to spare. And so if we need to turn on de-icing to the wings and the engine lips, we can do that easily and either remove it or keep it off. And a lot of the airplanes heat to the critical parts of the engine core is applied automatically once the engine is started. The pilots don't even, there was and a lot of these rules are made up since accidents. 30, 40 years ago, there was an accident where the pilots forgot to turn on engine heat, took off, and there was an accident. And so now everything produced in the engine manufacturers, once the engine is started, engine heat is applied to the critical areas there so that it is will be continuously de-iced, at least the engines if you enter icing conditions, and the pilots then watch the wings and that sort of thing. And we actually have it's a very cool thing, extremely low tech and very accurate. It's our little static temperature thermometer has a probe sticking about 3 inches out of the windshield, and it reads temperature. And sometimes the thermometer isn't even connected to it. It's just the ice probe. And you look out, and if ice is forming up on that probe, then we know it's forming up on the wings, and we turn on heat, and it comes off within seconds.
And
So
and
I
wouldn't
think
that apply during every flight? Because when you're up at 40,000 feet, isn't it
that's a very good
pretty
question.
chilly up there?
That was a good question, and Dieter just answered it. We at the temperature, we always have an indication of what the static outside air temperature is. At static outside air temperatures below 40 Celsius, which is the crossover point to Fahrenheit, is also 40 Fahrenheit, minus 40. The air can hold so little water that we don't need to run the anti-icing equipment at all. It can't hold any moisture in it, and it doesn't form on the airplane. So at high altitudes and cruise, we don't run it. It's right at the freezing level and a few degrees above it when the air can hold a lot of moisture, and we have to be extra vigilant to keep that off.
Mm.
So if there were any other questions, I just wanted to blow through that, but I didn't want to monopolize the whole thing, but I want to cover that for our winter reoccurrence in case you are going to get out and experience this de-icing thing. And it's been very well thought through and will be executed according to an accurate plan. And I was telling Diane the other day when I flew the 737 in the Airbus, we you set the airplane up in a certain way before it's about to get squirted in service. Well, I could do that from memory, and then I just look at the checklist to make sure I got it right. Well, pilots are real petty and vindictive, and if any other one has a morsel of they don't have, they become bitter and whine about it. So, in the end of my career, I was so lucky. I got to fly the 757 and the 767, mostly the 75 for 8 years, and it was just such an awesome airplane. Um, and we had a separate flight planning room for ETOPS, which
Let's
we,
know where you were going all those years.
yeah, so I was going to Hawaii. And we
Yeah.
had a separate planning room because we had to turn in overwater charts and plotting, told them where we intended to go, checkpoints were going to report in on us. There was actually some stuff involved with that, making sure we would go from A to B, B being Hawaii. Well, one of my compatriots came by and had been obviously a particularly bad morning somewhere, and he came staggering by and saw this prima donna sitting in the room, which had been dubbed the Don Ho room because that was where we did our Hawaii overwater flight planning. And he yells in there with a red face. He goes, "Do you prima donnas even know how to de-ice that thing?" And I kind of look around, and my first officer buddy goes, "God, Eric, do you know how to de-ice this thing?" And I go, "No, I never thought about it before." So he flew to Hawaii, and all the way to Hawaii, I had to check this out and go, "Hey, look at this part. I wouldn't have thought of that." So I'm reading the de-icing procedure for the 7.5. I never de-iced it in 8 years. Somehow we survived Phoenix and Hawaii without having to de-ice the
But
So,
7.
the real takeaway is somebody thought about it and
Oh
actually stuck
yeah.
it in the airplane. So
Yeah.
if
So
you ever needed to, you had it.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you can fly it. You can fly the airplane to miserable places if that's what you like to do.
so
Um,
I had something to add because we were talking about in the crew. This
uh-huh.
this is from our perspective as a flight attendant. There are places that I flew a littler plane. We have my CRJ 700, and some of the places we fly to don't have jet bridges. They just have ramps, which means if it's really really cold outside, because they have to open the main cabin door and put the ramp up, it's really cold inside because there's no laminar flow room. It's just a little curtain there to keep the cold air out. And a lot of those places, when we have an overnight, when we have to leave our aircraft overnight in those cold places, they have to drain all the water out.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah,
nodding his head. They have
yeah.
to drain all the water out so it doesn't freeze in the tanks.
Yeah.
And we have forward tanks and aft tanks for water for the front part of the plane, coffee maker and stuff like that, and water in the back. So there's water that comes through the lab faucet,
Hmm.
and they have to drain them all, and they don't refill them in the morning because there are times when it's still 6 degrees above
Yeah.
zero, and
Mhm.
so they literally can't refill the water in the aircraft, so we can't make coffee. It sounds silly, but we will, when we find that is the situation, when the ops people, the rampers say, well, we had to drain the plane. Well, we knew they were going to have to do it. I will let the gate agent know to make an announcement to all the passengers in the gate area that there will not be any hot beverages. There'll be no water available in that regard. If they want to have coffee, they need to buy it and bring it on the plane. It sounds,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, but that's just one of those little things that happens in winter operations. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
so we have big bottles of water in us. And so we will either put a big bottle of water in the lab, or we have the little sanitizing squares, and we'll put those in the lavatory so people can at least have something in order to clean their hands after they use the lavatory. So it's not just, oh, it's really cold and whatever. I mean, there's a million things that happen that's different when the weather's bad.
You got to winterize the airplane, even if it's just for overnight.
Right.
Exactly.
It was so cold one time. We have had iPhones that were a little mini computer, and that's what we used the flight attendants for everything. That was our peripheral brain. And this one morning we had about a 5:36 a.m. departure from Flagstaff, and I was forward, which meant I was the flight attendant at the beginning when everybody boarded. And it was about 5 degrees outside. And I walked on the plane, and we had to do all of our pre-flight, and I left my EFAD, my phone, my business phone, on the galley, and it had been warm because it had been in my pockets and in my bag. And when I set it down, the 6 degrees, 5, 6 degrees outside was about maybe 10 degrees inside the galley. And as I'm doing some work in preparation, I heard a pop, and I looked over, and it
Oops.
was so cold that the whole glass screen of my EFAD cracked just from the change in temperature. So, you know, all kinds all kinds of things can
Well,
happen.
'cause that's a winter hazard right there.
That was a winter hazard right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so buy your coffee before you get on board.
Yeah, I did, and it is a good thing. Yeah, I mean, you definitely want that's in your own very best interest to have them announce that before somebody boards the plane,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
because if you do take off at 5:36 a.m. and you were hoping to get that coffee on the plane, you're probably not going to be a happy camper. Um, but there is a question here. So is there any winter whether that planes cannot or do not fly in? Like, are there any conditions that in the winter, like, I guess.
Yeah. If we're on the ground and there's a band of freezing rain moving through, we just gotta wait it out.
Mhm.
And there's another condition called snow pellets. And snow pellets, by their nature, break up the de-icing fluid when they hit it, and it radically reduces the effectiveness of the de-icing fluid. We have to wait those out too. Fortunately, the snow pellets are really rare, and the bands of freezing rain are usually narrow. They're moving off. If we can counter that in the air, we usually know where it is.
Mhm.
And fortunately, the airplane has enough power, as I said, enough heat. The reason the rain is freezing is because it was warm above it somewhere and it froze. So usually we can climb if we would initially try avoidance, but also climb out of that layer of air where it's freezing and get into the slightly warmer air above, so that we're not being hit with the freezing rain. But freezing rain is a severe thing. Snow pellets, those kind of things. Sometimes those just require waiting them out.
Mhm. Okay,
And
awesome. Yeah, that was.
one last thing that I just thought about being cold, virtually no aircraft, almost no domestic airplanes have blankets anymore.
Yeah. Oh,
And
but
so COVID certainly was the death knell, but a lot of airlines were removing the blankets um, uh, before COVID hit. So, and airplanes can get cold. You just heard me talk about is 6 degrees outside and 10 degrees inside. So do dress warmly because we don't have blankets.
Yeah.
And most of the airplanes are very good, and they're able to adjust the temperature inside the cabin, the passenger cabin. But that's not the same. That's not the way it happens for a lot of the smaller planes, the ones that I fly.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, especially the smaller planes
Right. Can't we can't.
um definitely not as cozy in the winter.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to thank you both. That was super comprehensive, and I think anybody who is watching that, really hopefully took away that, again, like with everything, somebody somewhere thought of it, and so you can be safe. And I guess, yeah, I see the hearts and the, um, so you can be safe. And like Diane said, probably the more challenging aspect is gonna be remembering to pack your patience. And I do want to quick shout out on December 7th, I believe that's a Saturday. We do have our last Cleared for Takeoff 101 class at the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. So that's our free class. If you're interested, make sure you sign up for it. And if you're not local to Phoenix, you can make it there on the day off, on December 8th. That's the Sunday following that class. We're at 10 a.m. Pacific. What's that in Phoenix time? That's
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Yeah. Um, we have a 101 online class. So that, no matter where you are, um, we're gonna be able to host you there. Oh, was there some math?
Yeah, correction from Diane. I moved the hands on the clock the wrong way. The 10 a.m.
He
Pacific
said
is
9. I go,
11
no,
a.m.
it's not.
Yeah, it's 11 a.m. here. All these people that are messing with our clocks all the time.
Yeah,
I
yeah, and
never.
here I thought I saved myself the embarrassment and asked
No,
you guys.
no, no.
11 in Phoenix.
He's right. I'm wrong. Yeah, the clock people.
Yeah,
I like
clock people. Well, so 10 a.m. Pacific, whatever that is in Phoenix time, it's 1 o'clock Eastern. I do know that. So, um, those are both free classes. So definitely consider them if you're traveling later on in December. And yeah, thanks so much for jumping in. And next week, we'll probably have Capt Ron and a guest on from all the flying that he did over the last couple of weeks. So thanks again, Diane. Yep. Thank you, Eric.
You guys will be safe. I'm not going to make any promises about on time, but you'll be safe.
Be safe.